felt pushed away at a house last night. Submitted by user TrollDad IRL in r/paranormal encounters. My wife and I went on a haunted walking tour of the old town of a nearby city last night. We enjoy the spooky stories and the history, but never took the haunted part too seriously. Last night, at one of the old houses, the tour guide explained the history of the house and how she thought of it as her favorite stop. She said she had experienced the former resident, Alice, and that she always felt welcome there. She said that people have seen shadows cross the room at night and other times, but never threatened. She also said one of her fellow guides liked the house as well, but for the opposite reasons. He never felt welcomed and always had a disturbing feeling at that part of the tour. As we were staying by the front door, the house is not open to the public. Other people, 2 other women on the tour, were asking Alice to show herself and peering in the windows through the door. My wife looked on with interest while I stood back at the patio and leaned up against the railing. Nothing happened to them or for them, so they left the area and walked around to the other side. I stayed for a moment longer, looking inside the house from where I stood. It was then that I felt a gentle pressure on my chest. Not like a hand, but still a gentle push of some sort, accompanied by an overall tingling sensation in my body. I also felt the compulsion to leave right away, which I did. As I walked around the corner where the rest of the group was, my wife saw me and must have seen something on my face, even through the mask in the darkness. I explained the sensation I felt, and the tour guide said,
"That's Alice."
We talked for a bit and wondered why I and the other male tour guide felt that way when most everyone else felt welcome. My wife suggests that perhaps Alice did not like men. We live about 40 to 50 miles from where the tour was. About 6 hours later, around 3 a.m. or so when we were in bed, I experienced the first night terror I've had in a long time and the only sleep paralysis I've ever experienced. In what felt like a dream, I saw someone come into the room, an adult-sized shadow, move around to my wife's side of the bed and lay down. It was at that time the sleep paralysis occurred. I tried to move. I tried to talk, but all I could produce was a gurgling, rapid snoring sound. I was trying to form words, but just made noise. My wife poked me, which she often does when I snore, and I was able to form raspy, almost words of her name and help. It was clear in my head, but I don't know how clear it was to her. What I do know is that she woke up and shook me, concerned for my well-being. That broke my sleep paralysis. I apologized, but did not want to get into details at the time. She drifted back to sleep fairly quickly. It took me about 15 to 20 minutes to calm down and go back to sleep. I am a receptive skeptic, but that was the first time I experienced anything like that.
Even Marines can become afraid. Posted by user DonLeon710 in the ghoststories subreddit. The events discussed here have never been spoken to anyone else in full, and this is the first time I've ever written them down or documented them in any way. Maybe it's because I thought of it to be insignificant to others, or they wouldn't believe me. Either way, it still chills me to the bone and gives me goosebumps every time I think about it. I was enlisted in the Marine Corps, and while I was in MOS school, the school where you learn your job in the military, back in the winter of 2015, we had several strange occurrences happen. It felt like everything about Camp Johnson was strange, but I digress. My MOS school was constantly cycling through people as the older ones went off to the fleet and new ones came in to pick up a class. It always seemed like there were new people who didn't know the everyday routine and would get us all into trouble. Every night it seemed like someone was running out late to formation, as that's how we accounted for everyone before we went to bed. No one went to bed until everyone was accounted for. If a Marine got drunk as piss and showed up 3 hours late, we'd still be standing there waiting. If a Marine was running out late, mostly everyone would yell out, "Runner!" to encourage that person to not be late again and be embarrassed in front of everyone. Once everyone was accounted for, we would then post a guard on each floor in both barracks, and everyone would be confined to their rooms for the night. The doors weren't locked or anything, they just weren't supposed to come out. The duty would post in the middle of the hall and would walk back and forth occasionally. It was just one long hall, a bunch of doors, and a staircase on both ends of the hall. Anyone out of their rooms would immediately be spotted. The first and second events occurred when I was on duty. The third happened in front of the entire formation. Because of these, I will always believe in the paranormal. The first occurrence I merely chalked up as just weird at the time and decided to leave it at that. I was posted on duty on the second floor, reading my investment book that I'd picked up the day prior, when all of a sudden I hear footsteps coming down the hall on my left. I thought someone was out of their room and looked, to find nothing. I went up a floor and down a floor and asked both Marines that were posted if they'd seen or heard anything. Both of them said no. That put me a little on edge, but I thought I was just hearing things and immediately dismissed it. I went back to my floor and jumped back into my book. In the middle of winter, North Carolina can get pretty frigid, and the barracks were always looked at as the warm safe haven. That's why the coldness stood out. The barracks were never cold enough to make you shiver. I decided it was too cold to just sit there and read my book, so I decided to start pacing back and forth in the hall to warm myself up. This entire time I had this sense of pure anxiety, but again just chalked it up to my mind playing tricks on me, and that I must have been tired. But those footsteps couldn't get out of my head, and a couple of times it sounded like they were right behind me. At this point, I'm pretty freaked out, but again, I try to rationalize everything. As I'm walking from one end of the hall to another, I passed through a very cold spot, and the hair on the back of my neck stood up. This cold spot was very distinct, as I had been pacing back and forth and never felt it before. I immediately stopped in my tracks and slowly turned around, only to be greeted by an empty hall. Once again, I try to start rationalizing this and chalk it up to an anomaly, but I had to make sure that the cold spot wasn't still there. As I turn around and go to step, the light above me blows out. Not just goes dim or anything, but actually explodes. At this point I'm done and just want to get back to my chair and read my book. I was too freaked out to put up with scary bullshit. The next morning I chalked the entire night up to a weird night and thought no one would believe me, even if I did tell them. The second encounter occurred about a week or so later, when I was on duty on the second floor again. This is where the hair on the back of my neck truly stands up, because I know what I saw and heard that night, and that will never leave me. As I'm trying to finish that same investment book, I heard laughing and footsteps coming from the left stairwell. I get up and go to look, but this time someone is looking back, as a dark figure is peeking around the corner in the stairwell. Only the top of their head and their eyes were showing at a 90-degree angle to the doorframe, as if they were parallel to the floor with both hands next to his face grabbing the side of the doorframe. He was only there for a second, if that, but I was instantly frozen with fear. When the figure jutted back into the stairwell, I snapped out of my panic trance. I instantly ran down the hall telling the person, or what I thought to be a person, to come back, as they shouldn't be out of their room that late, and they needed to go back. Once I hit the stairwell, I knew that I would be able to hear which way the person went, as the stairs are very noisy if you're running up and down them. I heard nothing, though. Again, I went to the duty below and above, and again, neither of them saw anything. The only thing they heard was me when I called out to the person. I told them that I thought I saw someone out of their room, and just to keep an eye out. I used the same stairwell I came from, and went back to my floor. As I turned the corner from the stairwell, I saw it again, but this time for slightly longer. It was on the opposite stairwell, looking at me in the exact same position. Again, I froze in fear. I felt like prey at this point, but my mind again started to justify this figure as a person, and just as I started to move to run full sprint to the other side, the thing juts back into the stairwell. Once again, I reached the stairwell and stopped to listen. Again, nothing. Then I ran up and down the stairwell telling the duties to help me search the building. At the end of the search, we found nothing. At this point, I was no longer thinking that this was just a person, and we went back to my floor. The rest of the night was fairly quiet, and I didn't hear much of anything, but I was still anxious and freaked out. As my shift was ending, I anxiously waited for my relief. I went to the window next to the stairwell where we usually do turnover at. When I looked out to the parking lot, I saw someone running on the grass. Anyone who's been in the Marine Corps knows that you don't step on the grass. And as I tried to get a better look, my relief came up the stairs and I looked away. When I went to look back, no one was there. This was too late and too early for anyone to be awake. I remember that, but I don't remember the exact time. I know what I saw that night, and it still gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. Now, the third encounter isn't nearly as creepy as the second, but the fact that I wasn't the only one who saw this is what makes it the scariest for me, as it's been confirmed by others. I know I wasn't just seeing things. We were all standing in our formations, 2 formations on the left and the right, and 2 formations facing the barracks. The 2 barracks buildings faced each other with one central walkway, leading out towards the parking lot where we were. As runners came out, everyone could see them. I was in one of the formations that faced the barrack. Usually during this time, plenty of people would be talking, even though they weren't supposed to, but this night was different. Everyone was quiet. To this day, I still don't understand why. My formations and the formations around me had gotten accountability, and no one was missing from them. The new guys were still trying to organize themselves, so I assumed they were missing a person. When I saw a runner come out, I called it, and so did a few others, but not nearly the amount they usually do. This night had no moon, so it was really dark, and I was trying to see who the runner was, so I was just staring at him, trying to get a better look. He runs up the walkway to the left of the roundabout, his right, and turns onto the sidewalk. I'm still trying to see who it is, but I'm assuming it's a new guy. Now, in between the sidewalk and the parking lots, there is a patch of grass and some trees, but they're too thin for anyone to be hiding behind. Once this runner hits the second tree, he vanished. Confused, I said out loud, "What the fuck?" And the guy next to me looks at me, pale as a ghost, and said, "You saw that too?" Just to confirm, I asked him what he saw, and he said, "A runner, but he disappeared behind the tree." At this point, every fiber of my body turns cold, and everyone starts clamoring pretty loudly. Our instructor looks up and tells everyone to shut up, and we go back to being quiet. As this seems it would be a massive talking point now, I actually never spoke about that incident to anyone else there, and I never heard anyone else talk about it. I think it was so real we just didn't want to bring it up, or maybe people just didn't believe it. The "you saw it too?" still proves to me that what I saw that day was real. Whatever the reason for no one talking about it, I know that these 3 encounters will haunt me till the day I die. Edit. I have included a satellite view of this encounter on the subreddit for those who would like a visual representation of the events that occurred. Thank you guys so much for all the love on this post. I wasn't expecting the amount of support I've gotten thus far.
Thank you all for watching. If you want to find the original stories or the voice actors that read them, the links are in the description down below. If you like this sort of content, we will be posting Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. All of this is being done for free and by a small independent team, so be sure to show some love. I hope you all stay creepy, stay safe, and have a gay day.